a reboot of what I tried to do a bit ago. So today we're gonna be talking about the power of cognitive dissonance to trap and confuse you in a dangerous relationship. And I would love to know, for those who are in the audience, that making sure that everything technical is working and that you can hear me okay. I'm going to try to watch the chat. And yeah, I thanks so much for letting me know that we had a sound problem. But today we're going to really get into cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the thing that kept me in an agonizing position of indecisiveness. I really couldn't tell what was true and false about the relationship. And it's actually cognitive dissonance is another kind of a problem. It's not just a relationship problem. You feel it anytime you face a hard decision and you don't know what to do, and you really want to not make maybe the decision is the right one, maybe one is like morally or integrity or aligns with your goals better, but you're just not in the mood. Like you're thinking, do I want to go do something healthy today, or do I want to like not do something healthy? When you feel that tension and then you make a decision, you resolve it, but usually we resolve it by justifying our decision. So if our decision is not a really good decision, then we make an excuse of why we're doing it the way we're doing it. But in a toxic relationship, cognitive dissonance is something different. It's actually something way more sophisticated, and it's keeping you paralyzed in that relationship because you can't tell what's real, because there's two realities happening concurrently in that relationship. So that's why you end up not knowing what to do. And so here's what was discovered. Sandra L. Brown, in her study in 2014 at Purdue University of 600 couples of pathological love relationships, she found that survivors in these relationships cling to two opposing realities. They experience the good side of the person who is charming, they love bomb them. Maybe they were showering them with gifts and promises and creating a lot of, hope for the future. But then there was also a bad side. There was the abusiveness, the neglect, there may be the disrespect and the contempt. And what happened is that this duality both seem true. There's a clash between the hope and the harm. And so survivors had a hard time knowing which was real, because the person who's doing both continued to create the narrative of both. They alternated back and forth between both. And then Peter Salerno recently wrote a book on cognitive dissonance, and he highlighted how this internal conflict forces you as a survivor to continually rationalize or excuse the abusive person's behavior in order to preserve the relationship, because your mind is prioritizing attachment and safety over the truth. And I want you to hear me. This is not victim blaming. I'm going to actually break down what's happening that causes you to prioritize attachment and safety. So it's based on a neurological process that's getting hijacked that causes you to make those priorities. So it isn't because you're weak or you're not setting good boundaries. This is because literally your brain is working against you because of the sophisticated manipulation that you're experiencing. So let me define, just so that everybody's clear, what cognitive dissonance is. In a narcissistic relationship, it's the chronic state of inner conflict that results to holding on to the narcissist's contradictory identities of both loving and abusive, while trying to preserve both the attachment and self-coherence. So survivors resolve the dissonance by minimizing the harm, overvaluing the rare good moments, and distorting realities in a way that allows the relationship to continue. Again, now I know hearing that, it's like, for those of us who are so sensitive, we're going to think, see, I knew it was me. I know that I'm doing something wrong. If I would just get stronger, I could leave. No, I want you to hear me. We're going to get into the biometric components that are actually leading to this confusion. So please hold on and do not do a whole lot of shaming of yourself around this, because this is going to make more sense. And when it makes more sense, I think you're going to be horrified what's actually happening. So here's some core mechanisms at play that create intense confusion. Intermittent reinforcement, which is a cycle of reward and punishment. And that binds you, by the way. That's the most addicting reward cycle. It's more addictive than interval or based on time. When you're not for sure what you're going to get next out of the slot machine, you don't leave the table. You don't leave the slot machine, because you don't know if that next pull might get something good. So that randomness creates a bind, creates an intense attraction and magnetism that keeps you there. Then there's a power in equity in relationships. And you may not have realized that there's multiple ways that this person's created an equity of power. It could be a difference in maturation or life stage, or maybe a difference in resources. Maybe this person has more access to money or a better living situation. Maybe they have more influence, or maybe they just have more resources. But it could be also because they're deceiving you. So the inequity of power is because they're in the know and you're not. Or the inequity in power could be they're not that invested in the relationship. I mean, they don't want to lose it, but they're not invested in so much really showing up for you. They're not committed to you. In fact, I just heard someone say, we need to learn how to own, not rent people, relationships. People like this are people who rent relationships. They never own a relationship, but you're likely to be a person who owns relationships, to make a commitment. And in David Schnarf's book called The Passionate Marriage, he said the person who is the most invested has the least amount of power. So if you want this relationship to work, if you're all in, if I always think of the hokey pokey game. If you put your whole self in, and this person is only putting an arm or a leg randomly in, they're not invested, then you're unfortunately have a weaker position. You're more vulnerable than they are. And of course, you probably have been trauma bonded as well. You're blaming yourself because the only way to resolve this dissonance is to conclude that somehow it's your fault, that I must need to do better, or maybe they're just having a bad day, or maybe this is a temporary problem. But this kind of self blame is how you reduce the inner tension so that it makes sense. And then the narcissist is rewriting the narrative, which helps you rewrite the narrative. So you start to create a story with them that fits whatever's happening, so that you say to yourself it's not bad. And I'll bet you, if you were really honest with yourself, and I know that this was true about me in the middle of that relationship, I knew I couldn't tell anybody the full truth because I knew it would make me look bad because I couldn't explain why I couldn't leave. So then I just left out critical details because I knew they were crazy making, and I it looked like I was wishy-washy and that I didn't know my own mind. So I just curated. I like opt out of certain details so people didn't know what I was surviving and experiencing. And even we sometimes, it's because of betrayal blindness, we sometimes miss critical features, critical details, because we can't see the truth because we need the relationship. We're depending on somebody. Again, I know that word need is a hot button because we think like we have this mentality that nobody should need anything. We all are free agents. We should just pull ourselves up by the bootstrap, but that's not how it works. I mean, as much as we might like that or wish that was true, that's actually not how your biology, how your neurology, how your relationship psychology works. It doesn't work that way. You are dependent. You are a social creature. Think of yourself like, like dogs and horses are pack animals. We need community. We need a sense of belonging. And we also influence each other. We are shaping each other. We're open systems. We're open loop. And impacted by what happens around us. So when this person that we're in a relationship with, this narcissist or whomever, and maybe it's a psychopath or antisocial personality disorder or whatever type of difficulty they're having, when they behave inconsistently, we have to make it make sense. So we find a story that fits the story in order to say it's not that bad. And then these relationships are identity shattering. These prolonged experiences to this duality erodes your belief in yourself. It causes a lot of self-abandonment and a lot of self-betrayal. Because what you're experiencing is what Sandra Brown calls self-perceptual distortions. So what actually happens, for those who don't know what this feels like, and I'll tell you, until it occurred to me, I had no clue. I mean, here I am in the office seeing patients for 25 years, and I really didn't know what my patients were experiencing. I kind of assumed they had full all the options available to them. I figured that their indecisiveness was really actually a character flaw. I didn't know that what I was seeing was a result of the distortions in the relationship until I experienced myself. And then I became unrecognizable. I'm the kind of person that there for a while I was in real estate. And when I would go in to look at a property for a rental property, I might see 5 or 6 in a day, and I would walk away knowing exactly which one I wanted, and I'd buy it. And, I was really it wasn't like took several weeks and saw hundreds of places. No, I knew which one, I knew what my budget was, I knew how to run the numbers to know what would make a good business deal, and I would make a decision and do it. But here I am in this relationship after being a businesswoman, having a private practice as a psychologist for 25 years, and I can't make a decision to leave. I couldn't figure out what was real because both seemed real. The person, he seemed both not invested and invested. He seemed to love me and he seemed to hate me. He seemed to be committed and he seemed to be just checked out. I couldn't tell what was true and real in that relationship. So it creates this mental whiplash. By the way, I didn't share with you, and I hope you stick around because I'm going to give you two surveys today, two tests today. The first is going to tell you whether or not you're struggling with cognitive dissonance. So you're going to want to stick around and find out if you're struggling. And the second is going to tell you, if you are, what stage of cognitive dissonance you're struggling with, because there's 3 stages. So I hope that you bear with me today. Thank you so much for tolerating the technical difficulties we're having earlier. For those of you who are watching on YouTube and Facebook and joined this live, you probably don't know that we had technical difficulties, which is great. But thank you so much for being with me today. I'm Dr. Carrie McAvoy. So if I'm new to you, first of all, I'm thrilled that you're here. I'm a retired psychologist with over 25 years of counseling, clinical practice. I'm actually a clinical psychologist. And then I ended up getting in an abusive relationship. So here I am having a practice, a good relationship. I was married 31 years, and then my late husband died suddenly of cancer, and I ended up widowed. And I really wanted another healthy relationship. So I started looking and meeting men, and I met a lot of decent people, but not good matches. And then I met this guy, and he checked all the boxes, and he said all the right things, and he charmed me. And I thought, because I was a skeptic, that soulmates didn't exist. And then I thought, you know what? I was wrong. I've met my soulmate. And within a year, we were married. And I'll tell you, I entered into a very, very dark period of incredible coercive control, incredible emotional abuse that led me reeling, just reeling. And I couldn't get out. And I'll tell you, for a long time, I was ashamed to say this, but now that I know what I know, I'm not. He left me, guys. I didn't leave. I didn't know how to leave. I tried once and then I went back and I couldn't do it. And I was to the point where I was praying desperately, please help me. Please help me get out. I can't get out. I can't make the decision. And he decided to leave me. And you know what? He did me a favor. I'm glad he left. Now I know that Mary was a part of this discussion earlier, one of the people here in the live, and who's just recently been discarded by her partner, and she's devastated. And I was devastated too when it happened, but there was another part of me that saw this as the answer that I needed that I wasn't able to make for myself. So we're going to talk about why, or actually, first we're going to get into what cognitive dissonance feels like. It feels like mental whiplash. You're being whipped back and forth between two opposing realities. They love you, they just humiliated you. She says I'm her soulmate, and she disappears for days. He says he's working on it, and then he does something and massively betrays me again. And that constant swing leaves you feeling dizzy and you can't find any footing. There's tremendous self-doubt and confusion. You start to question your own memory and judgment, and plus you're being gaslit, which adds to a whole nother dimension to it. You start to wonder, maybe I'm overreacting, or maybe I've misunderstood, or something's wrong with me. And then you're being fed both hopeful thoughts, future, and promises at the same time you're being harmed. And so you cling to the proof of the good moments and then think that maybe that painful reality is just a fluke or a state or momentary problem, and you're going to work it through and it's going to get better. But that hope and harm combined together is what's creating such incredible confusion. And then there's emotional paralysis because your mind is trying to reconcile both truths. So often it just starts to shut down. It starts to have difficulty making decisions. You feel extraordinarily stuck and frozen. You start to overthink every move that you make to avoid triggering conflict. And you're just living like in survival mode, like no option feels safe. And again, I'm going to talk about the neurology, what happens in the back end in your brain that makes this such a problem. And if you stick around to the end, I'm going to give you practical steps to help you start to break this cognitive dissonance. And if you really would like to go deeper, I have a course called First Steps to Leaving. And if you go to my links, or I know we're also flashing links in some places, then you can be able to find it. And today we're actually offering I think it's a 20% discount. It's already low. It's a $30 course, and I'm offering it for 20% off. So let's talk about the fact. Oh, I didn't finish all the ways it leaves you confused. You're left with chronic anxiety. There's identity distortions that you end up feeling like there's something wrong with you, because Sandra Brown calls it self perceptual distortions. And then you end up in this if only loop. And boy, could I resonate with this. You start to say, well, if only I didn't bring up the problem, then things stay good. In fact, they tell you that too. Or if only I could be more patient, they'll change. And this only loop that you're doing is actually a survival strategy to reduce the discomfort of the dissonance inside. And there's a tremendous exhaustion that also is a part of it, because it's such a psychological battle. I remember feeling like there were times that life didn't feel worth it. It just didn't. I almost wish that life would make a decision for me, because I couldn't make one. I felt so foggy and depleted, so emotionally numb, that I knew this was not sustainable, but it had become just way that life was. I literally in a given day would analyze, is he in it or not in it? I go back and forth between these two realities multiple times over and over, trying to figure out what was true and real. I would like measure every move, every comment, every action to say, "Oh, is he working or is he not working? Is there hope or is there no hope?" It was so agonizing. Okay, so let's define the three stages of cognitive dissonance. And then I want to talk about the biology of why this is so effective and the damage it's doing to your brain, because it's actually damaging your brain. So the stages are three. The first is you get into this relationship and you think you've met the most amazing person ever, because you've been only in the beginning primarily introduced to the good side of this person. So you didn't know it was actually an idealized, not real version. See, here's the really hard truth of the situation. That good side is the fiction. It's the fiction. The bad side is actually the truth, but they leave you confused to know which is which. So you get into the relationship and you've been sold a fiction. They've created this fantasy. And suddenly something happens and you see the truth and you discover they're not who they said that they were. There's some massive betrayal that blows up your world, and you finally suddenly discover this person has a whole nother side that you were totally unaware of. And you at first you think to yourself, "Who is this person?" I remember when it happened to me, I found out he'd been cheating, and here we are on our honeymoon, and I discovered he's cheating, and he's been cheating for a while, and I actually thought to myself, I thought I knew where he was on any given day. I thought I knew he was at work. And then I thought I knew where he was, errands he was running. And I realized that I actually didn't know anything. I All of it had been just a story fed to me, and I couldn't actually go back in time and pinpoint anything. And suddenly this thought hit me. I don't know him. He's a stranger. And that was so shocking to me that I actually lost consciousness. I was so like devastated. It was as if my mind blew up and my world, my reality shattered. And so you end up feeling incredible bewilderment and shock. You feel so anxious and you're desperately looking for answers, because you don't know, you can't make anything make sense when you discover this. So you start to then to deal with that tremendous pain. You say to yourself, there's got to be an explanation. And if we could just figure this out, then maybe I can fix it. Or there's got to be more that I don't know. So you start to go into the search with them to kind of figure out what happened. And by the way, they're not ready to leave you or lose you yet, so they cooperate with this. So they're usually like quite repentant and they act really broken. They're usually willing to go the extra mile for a while and try to stabilize stuff, because they don't want to lose the good thing that they have with you either. So they're not ready. So there's sort of, you're in this like, maybe we can fix this. Maybe it's not that bad. Well, then stage two starts to happen. And that's where the abuse gets chronic enough, the criticism and the backlashes, the contempt, the disrespect, the deception, that you start to like try to bargain. You're trying to weigh the evidence of the abuse against the evidence and moments of their love. And that's when you get this really intense loop between hope and harm. They feed you hope while they harm you, feed you more hope while they harm you. And you start to think, well, maybe if we just get counseling, things will get better. Or maybe if we're just patient and wait it out, it's this life stage. It's whatever we're doing. I thought for me is when we get him out of that work situation and he's resting better because he looked so exhausted. Who knew that cheating was exhausting? He looked really exhausted. Even my kids were worried about him. We thought, well, slow down and he'll start to feel better. Or you end up saying to yourself, well, all relationships are work. And for me to give up is just inappropriate. Well, what you're feeling is you're being torn between both realities, both the hope and the despair, between the good side and the abusive side. And you're really afraid of losing the good moments because I'll tell you, by the way, guys, who's not experienced this, they're really good. And it's, by the way, some people will say, well, it's the physical side that's really good. No, sometimes that is really good. Sometimes it's not good, but there is enough good. And for me, I'll tell you, that person that I met, he was one of the best conversationalists I've ever had in a man. He and I could talk literally he said that. You and I could talk for hours. We never run out of something to say. I found him fascinating that way. And when we had a really good time, it was really a good time. So you end up being afraid of losing those good moments and you're confused that maybe leaving might be an overreaction. So the common beliefs that you end up experiencing at this stage is it could be saved if I just did more, or he must love me or she must love me because why else would they be staying? And then you end up also thinking, you tell yourself, leaving means I didn't try enough or I didn't try hard enough. Slowly, you move into stage 3. And in stage 3, it's the longest, most painful stage. That's where things are bad. This person does a lot of harming to you, that they've been betraying you massively. And you also know that you're betraying yourself because you're staying. And in this, you start to turn to shame and blame, and it takes an incredible toll on you. So you start to wonder, what's wrong with me that I can't leave? And I remember hitting that stage and, then I started feeling defective, like really, really broken. And I said, I did say that something must be broken inside of me. Why am I so weak? And then I also said to myself, other people would made a better decision faster. So what's wrong with me that I can't? So there's such deep shame here and hopelessness. Often there's emotional paralysis. You feel very trapped and you're feeling very lonely and you're moving into despair. And so you start to think, maybe I deserve this. Maybe I'm too damaged to be loved in a healthy way. Maybe I'm never going to be strong enough to leave. Okay, so those are the 3 stages, and I'm gonna in a few minutes help you know what stage you're stuck in. So, but first, I want to talk about what's been happening to your brain. So when your brain started picking up that there was another side to this person, that they weren't authentic, there was something disingenuous, something off, something deceptive, it went into alarm. It said there's danger and there's a threat. And but because of the practical stuff happening on a day-to-day basis and the stuff you're being fed, the part of you that thinks didn't see it, can't see it. It's being hidden. But the amygdala is saying, woo, yeah, wait, something, there's a fire here. It's an active big, there's more than just smoke. There's something wrong here. So as a result, you start to move into hypervigilance. You start to walk on eggshells. You start to feel agitated, worked up. You struggle sleeping. You're feeling highly distractible. You're on pins and needles, jittery. You feel like you have ADHD suddenly because your fear alarm is going off that something's really, really wrong. At the same time, the hippocampus, which is in the center of the brain, it's part of the limbic system, part of your emotional system, but it also part of your memory system. It stores contextual memories to make sense of past experiences. It's under repeated stress. So it's being flooded by all the cortisol set off by the amygdala. The amygdala says we're in danger. And to cope with danger, the amygdala then prepares the body to cope with an emergency and it raises your cortisol level. Well, the hippocampus is being flooded with this. And research shows that trauma causes damage to the hippocampus, that it actually leads to fragmented memories, which is why you feel like you doubt your recall. And in order to reduce the dissonance, the confusion of like, what's true? Is this person good or bad? the brain starts to alter or soften the memories, minimizing the abuse and inflating the good moments. So it ends up kind of changing the way you're storing memories. The memories are fragmented, making it harder to recall, and it's dulling them in order to reduce the tension inside because of all the alarms that are going off. And that causes, because of all of this, and it's been observed in PTSD patients, that your hippocampus starts to shrink. It actually starts to get smaller in size. And that means you're now having an impaired, cogent, recall, and your reality testing is getting reality testing means how you know what's true or real in the world. It gets harder to know what's real or true. So as a result, you lose access to a clear, consistent narrative about what actually is happening. So if you end up like people around you, it's like, what do you mean you don't know this person's harming you? I know they're harming you. I watch what they do. I watch they put you through the loops and through the hoops all the time. And you're thinking, yeah, but really, did that happen like that? I mean, we just had a really like good date this weekend, and I mean, they are good. I know they're good. See, but that's because your memories are being fragmented and it's harder to recall. The prefrontal cortex, that's up front. That's where you make reasons and decisions and you organize your thoughts. That part actually regulates your logic. And in stress, the amygdala, that back part of the brain that's setting off all the fire alarms, it hijacks, it shuts down the front. It shuts it down so it makes rational decisions harder. And because it's trying to prepare the body for an emergency. So it thinks, we don't need to know why you need to get out of a burning house. You just need to get out of a burning house. So the mind is preparing you for action, which shuts off the front that's thinking so that you do the action. Only you're in this state for a long time. And there isn't actually immediate action that you can take. But the brain says, no, 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 you don't need to prioritize thinking. That's not, we don't need that. We just need to move. We need to act. So as a result, you end up feeling like you're being mistreated, but you can't take action because the stress-driven brain is prioritizing survival over clarity. And that's why you can list all the abuse, but then say, I can't leave. Why can't I leave? So as a result, the survivor's brain prioritizes the attachment and the immediate safety of the familiar over your long-term well-being. And then, of course, your dopamine and reward pathways are being hijacked by the intermittent reinforcement of the cruelty and the affection. And as a result, it makes the brain more addicted to the swings between adrenaline and cortisols, making it harder to leave because the bond gets more intense. So the good moments just gives you a surge of dopamine, and then which reinforces your hope, and it deepens your confusion. And then, of course, the bad moments increases the cortisol, which then damages the hippocampus and recall and shuts off your thinking part of your brain. So here's what research has found. This amygdala hyperactivity in abusive relationship is the same as PTSD and complex trauma. So you have a heightened fear response that's very difficult to calm down. And the hippocampus volume reduction has been documented, leading to memory fragmentation and disorientation. And the suppression of your prefrontal cortex under chronic stress explains why you have decision paralysis and why you know something's wrong, but you can't act. And then studies on intermittent reinforcement has showed that kind of reward system creates a strong, harder to break bonds than consistent reward. So effectively, cognitive dissonance that occurs in narcissistic abuse is not just a puzzle that you can't solve. It's actually a neurological, biological trap because your amygdala is screaming danger. Your hippocampus is rewiring the memories that reduces the internal conflict. Your prefrontal cortex is offline because it's under stress. And the dopamine system is keeping you chasing hope. It's not your fault you are struggling to leave. Your brain has been hijacked. I want to say it again for those who blame victims. It's not your fault you can't leave. Your brain has been hijacked. And it is impairing your functioning. So your ability to plan and prioritize is now compromised. You're struggling to regulate your emotions. You're having difficulty with focus and attention. You're struggling to inhibit impulses. You're having a hard time making decisions. And to hold memories in your working memory is really, really difficult. So when you get stuck in cognitive dissonance, these functions are compromised because of these things working in the back end in your neurology. Yeah. No wonder you're struggling to leave. No wonder this has been so extremely difficult. And because of that, you're having a difficult time assessing the risk. You can't tell how bad it is or how dangerous it is because your risk assessment logic has been skewed. So you often minimize the danger of staying while overestimating the risk of leaving. You see the financial devastation is going to happen. You get scared over the custody. You worry you're going to be lonely. You worry they're going to retaliate. And that feels more dangerous than what you're surviving. And as a result, staying feels safer even when it's actually more harmful. So, as a result, it cripples your executive functioning. And as a result, survivors often say, I feel fuzzy and foggy. I'm frozen. I know I'm not myself. I can't think straight. And this isn't a weakness. This is an outcome of your brain under siege. Your executive function has been hijacked with the need to resolve an impossible contradiction while under chronic stress. Okay, so here comes a survey. Are you experiencing cognitive dissonance? I want you to choose the statement that feels the most true for you right now. So I'm going to ask you 5 statements, and I want you drop me in the comments which statement feels most true. 1, 2, 3, or 4. I'm sorry, it's four statements, and I want you to drop me in the comments which one feels the most true. And then I'm going to tell you what stage you're in based on that, which one feels true. Okay, statement number 1. Are you wondering who is this person? And you're thinking, I feel confused by their contradictions. Sometimes they're loving, sometimes they're cruel. I don't know which is true. If that describes you, drop a 1. Stage number 2. You're wondering, is this relationship salvageable? You know it's harmful, but you keep hoping it can get fixed. And you're wondering, if I could just try harder, maybe things will change. I want you to drop a 2 if that describes you. This is number 3. You're starting to wonder what's wrong with me. I can see the abuse clearly, but I feel stuck and I blame myself for not being able to leave. I want you to put a 3 if that describes you. And number 4 is, I don't relate right now. I'm not experiencing any conflict in my relationship. I don't relate to this content at all. Okay, so drop a 4 if that's you. So here's what this means. If you said 1, you're in the early stage of cognitive dissonance, you're experiencing confusion. If you said 2 describes your experience, you're in the bargaining stage, you're mid stage, you're stage 3. If you said number 3, you're stuck in the self blame and you're late stage cognitive dissonance. And if you said number 4, you're not experiencing cognitive dissonance at all. Okay, so what I want to do is help you. Um, I want to help you figure out more what you're struggling with and maybe even dig a little deeper into this. So we're going to break it down even further. So this is around detecting cognitive dissonance. What do I want you to do? I want you to notice which of these you agree with, which of these resonate. So I'm going to ask you 15 questions and I want you to say yes or no to them. You might want to get a pen and paper or pull your phone out and kind of open notes up and notice which ones you agree with, which ones kind of align with you. Guys, thank you so much for all the gifts today. I really appreciate this. I know this topic is powerful because it's really what I struggled with. It was where I was paralyzed. So I understand if you're resonating with this because this is what keeps us stuck. The trauma bond is built on cognitive dissonance. The trauma bond, so cognitive dissonance, what happens in our head that then creates the attachment. So the trauma bond's the attachment, the evidence of it, but cognitive dissonance is really sort of like the backbone structure to a trauma bond. Okay, so ready for the 15 questions? Yes or no to each one. Pay attention to which ones you say yes to. All right, number 1, I feel like I'm living with 2 versions of my partner, the one who loves me and the one that hurts me. Yes or no? Number 2, I often excuse or explain away behaviors that deep down I know are not okay. Number 3, I find myself replaying conversations or incidents, wondering if I'm imagining them or if I'm exaggerating them. Number 4, the relationship makes me feel both cherished and unsafe, and sometimes in the same day and maybe minutes apart. Number 5, I feel pressure to be perfect so I don't lose the good side of my partner. Number 6, I'm bewildered by my partner's contradictions and I struggle to reconcile them. Number 7, sometimes I think, did I ever really know who they were or who they are? Number 8, I believe things could be improved if I just tried harder or stayed patient or maybe just found the right strategy. Number 9, I tell myself every couple has issues. This just is ours. Number 10, I hold on to the good times as proof that the relationship is worth saving. Number 11, even though I see the harm clearly, I'm stuck and unable to leave. Number 12, I blame myself for being weak or damaged because I can't walk away. Number 13, I wonder if I deserve better, but maybe this is the best that I can hope for. Number 14, I often feel mentally foggy, paralyzed, or unable to make a decision. Number 15, my energy goes into managing the relationship, leaving very little left for me. Okay, so if you said most yeses to the first 5 questions, you're experiencing cognitive dissonance, the sort of the early stage. If you also said yes to 6 and 7, that's stage 1, the early stage of it, the confusion stage. But if you said more yeses to 8 to 10, you're probably in stage 2, which is the bargaining, wondering if the relationship is salvageable. If you said a lot of yeses to 11 or 13, you're in the self-blame stage 3 and you're wondering what's wrong with you. And if you answer 14 and 15 yes, then cognitive dissonance is dramatically, significantly impacting your daily life. So, how do survivors keep unintentionally, hear the word unintentionally, keep cognitive dissonance alive? Unfortunately, because of all that's happening with the neurobiology that's hijacking and all the kind of distortions that we're living in, we unintentionally keep cognitive dissonance alive ourselves. And here is 6 ways we do that. We first minimize the harm. We'll tell people or tell ourselves it's not that bad, or everybody's got flaws, or other people have it worse. And it lowers the urgency to act and it minimizes mistreatment. Number 2 is we inflate the good. When we say it's good, it's amazing, or no one has ever loved me like this, or those tender moments prove that the real person's still in there. And what this does is it keeps you hooked by clinging to the intermittent reinforcement. Number 3 is the self-blame and shame. We think, well, maybe I'm just too sensitive, or maybe if I were a better partner, things would be different, or it's my fault they get angry. And what we do is turn the focus inward, distracting ourselves from our abusers' accountability for their behavior. Number 4 is magical thinking and bargaining. We think if I just did X, things would change, whatever X is. Or things will get better when all this stress passes. Or just one more chance and then I'll decide. Or here's the one that I got stuck on. If I could just find enough evidence, then it'll take me to leave. By the way, there was not enough evidence. That's not possible. What happens with this is it creates enough endless conditions that it delays you leaving. Number 5 is there's a fear of loss and can't say the word, you're catastrophizing. There it is. Catastrophizing leaving. You think, I'll never find anyone else, or they'll fall apart without me. I can't be that cruel, or I'm not going to survive financially or emotionally all on my own. And what happens, it makes staying feel safer than the unknown, even though staying is harmful to you and actually hurting your brain, hurting your neurology. And number 6, and this comes out of Sandra Brown's work, there's identity distortions. You think to yourself, this must be what love feels like, or maybe I'm really not meant for a healthy relationship, or I'm damaged goods. And what this does, it erodes your self-trust and convinces you that leaving isn't a good option. So really watch out for this. Okay, so we have done a lot of discussion. I now want to talk about how to start to heal, how to resolve the confusion. So there are 6 steps that we're going to talk through that can help you break free and reclaim your freedom and your sanity again, your clarity. I want you to first, and if you're struggling, consider there is like I said, an online course that I'm offering 20% off today called First Steps to Leaving. It's a $29.99. So essentially $30 course that I'm offering today, 20% off with a coupon code 20 off group. So you put in the words 20 off group into First Steps to Leaving, you can get 20% off. First, I want you to name the split. That first part to healing this is recognition. You feel crazy because you're holding on to a dual reality, both that they love me and they harm me. So if you start to name the fact that there's both realities exist and you're holding on to two realities and you can't have both realities be true, it starts to help you reduce the shame and start to externalize the problem is out there, not inside you. So you start to realize this is not a me problem, this is a other person problem. You start to see that this is a psychological trap. So start naming the split that there's a dual reality. Number two, I want you to validate the emotional reality. Survivors often invalidate your own feelings to resolve the dissonance. You kind of revert. You need to reverse this. Instead of asking yourself, "Is it really that bad?" I want you to start saying, "How does it feel in my body when this happens?" Or say, "Would I be okay if a good friend was experiencing this, or one of my kids was experiencing this?" That was the critical question for me that got me out. I asked myself, "Would this be okay if somebody did this to one of my sons?" And I said, "Absolutely not." And then I followed up with this next question. I'd love you to take it as well. If it's not good for your friend or good for one of your kids, why is it okay for you? And I started realizing, well, I can take it. Really? You're that big? You're that strong? You should sacrifice yourself like that? You wouldn't want one of your kids to sacrifice themselves like that, or a good friend of yours to sacrifice themselves like that. Why are you thinking you are more than you're capable of that kind of sacrifice when you don't see anybody capable of that? Here's why that really helps to validate the emotional reality, because your emotions actually don't lie. It anchors you in your lived experience instead of the narrative that the narcissist or the psychopath is feeding you. Okay, number three, I want you to start creating cognitive distance, not dissonance, distance. I want you to maybe think of this detachment. Start creating some distance, some detachment, because confusion thrives when you're close and enmeshed with that person. So if you start to build some distance between them and you, it gives you more breathing room. You can start to see things better. So here's a strategy. Ask your, if my best friend told me this story, what would I think? So think about telling your best friend, think about your best friend telling you your story. What would you think? And why this helps, because taking that other perspective helps bypass that fog of attachment of that seemingly feeling safe to not make any action, and taps into your own wisdom. Number four, I want you to start holding both without collapsing. So trying to force an answer, they love me or they abuse me. They love me or they disrespect me. We don't try to choose. Don't choose. Instead, hold on to both. Um, healing takes learning to tolerate that both truths can be true. This person can act loving, but also harm you. This person can say that they're working hard and not work hard at all. So start to think, hold those things as both occurring. Dr. Ramani calls this stacking, multiple truths. I want you to start stacking multiple truths that often we think don't go together. So by you practicing this dual awareness that there's both good moments and there are bad moments, helps you to accept that there's complexity, and it weakens your denial, and it helps the truth gain more validity, more credibility with you. Number five, I want you to start rebuilding self-trust. Self-trust got eroded the minute you met this person because they started working on you. I want you to notice and affirm small daily truths, like I was hurt when they yelled. And that's true. That's valid. I was hurt when they yelled. What it helps, these little micro validations you give yourself, retrains the brain to trust its own perceptions again. And number six, I want you to feel compassion for the stuck part of you. Self blame keeps the dissonance alive. You need compassion for yourself, that you're still clinging to hope. I want you, instead of saying to yourself, "Why am I so weak?" I want you to say to yourself instead, "Of course I've held on. I've needed the hope to survive." And what this helps with, it soothes the shame and starts to unhook you from the false belief that you're trapped and that you're broken. So, the first steps to psychologically leaving is naming, validating, distancing, tolerating multiple complex truths that don't seem to fit, rebuilding self trust, and softening the shame. And this starts to create the inner scaffolding that you need to be able to take the practical decisions to leave. So by building this up inside of yourself, you get ready to help you to get ready to leave. All right. This was tough, guys. This is a lot of hard stuff. And I hope you walked away with a sense of you need to really not be beating yourself up and super hard on yourself, that this is a extremely complex situation. And that I really want you to take away that your neurobiology has been hacked. And that's why you're struggling to leave, is because of the confusion. It's really changing the way that you see things. It is reducing your access to your decision making, your logic, and that's why you're really, really struggling. So, again, I just get so angry at people who think that this is about simply a matter of mind over matter. It's not. This is something that's been very, very damaging and has deeply, profoundly affected you. All right. Some of you don't know because you weren't here to hear it, but I had a eye procedure done today. And as a result of that, I can't read very well. So everything's very blurry. In fact, if you could see the cornea, the white part of no, not the cornea, you could see the white part of my eyes, they're yellow. So everything right now has got this fuzzy haze and it's very, very unclear. So I'm not going to take your questions today just because I can't see. But I'd love to have you come back next week. Let me tell you what next week's topic is going to be. And for those of you who don't know, I always go live at 4 o'clock on Tuesdays. And we usually do an education for an hour. Today was kind of weird because of the technical difficulties. But next week, we're going to be looking at it's about, I know what it's, I know who we're featuring. We're featuring Josh Tomeo, I can't say his last name. Taomi. He's the Derelict podcast. He is what he has. And he's going to look at like why men see themselves as abused. So the title of next week's live is going to be why men don't realize it's abuse. So we're going to get into why men don't see abuse as abuse. And I want to talk about this from both angles. When men who are experiencing abuse, why they miss that they're experiencing abuse, and even why men don't see abuse in the same way that women do. So we're going to get into that next week. And then the week after that, and I'll tell you, I'm really excited about the week after that. We're going to be talking about worldviews, why betrayal could be seen as different, why some people betray you but don't see it as a betrayal, how different worldviews frame betrayals differently. We're going to actually take a test to find out what your worldview is and talk about how every personality style, every worldview style could become abusive and what abuse actually looks like. So that's in 2 weeks. So thank you so much for putting up with today's technical problems, for your patience. I'm thrilled that you're here. I hope it was helpful. But the biggest thing I want to really leave you with is just a massive dose of compassion for yourself. If you're paralyzed and you have feel frozen, you feel really stuck, I hope now you have more of an understanding why you're feeling that way and knowing that it's not about some internal flaw. This is actually due to very complex relational dynamics that have impacted your biology. And I hope that you have some first steps to be able to get out. If you'd like more details, more help with this, consider joining the Toxic Free Relationship Club. Also consider the first steps to leaving online course is more help. But thank you guys so much for joining me today. And I'll see you back here next week.